talking about massive reclamation and not really doing very much about the land which has been destroyed to a large extent, which was farmland and which is constantly being eaten into by potential developers. And gradually there's this encroaching development which is happening. There is a lot of land which is damaged, which was farmland, and no one seems to be taking the bull by the horns or grasping the nettle and actually making a policy which is effective. And your government is no different to anyone else's.
Without the small house policy, Peter, we need to create new land. And we need to accommodate the growing population in Hong Kong. We also need to sort of address this huge backlog of housing needs.
Why do you need to create new land? I don't understand this notion that we are going to carry on expanding with our population to 8 million, 9 million, 10 million, whatever. There doesn't appear to be a population policy which has any effective basis, and you're talking about filling in huge tracts of sea in order to build new properties. It just doesn't make any sense to me when there is a lot of damaged land which can be used, and that is actually in the new territories and to some extent on the islands, and it could be used more effectively rather than having small houses which are cheap by jowl with each other, accommodating often nobody.
The planning department and other departments of Hong Kong have been looking at the actual numbers of supply and demand. On the question of demand, it isn't a question of the growing population that we need to cater for, but also the growing number of households, because household size is getting smaller and smaller. And so a number of flats we need to produce has to match that as well. We have taken a long, hard look at, for example, housing demand, and therefore we have this long-term housing strategy. And we come up with this estimated need of 470,000 units to be built. Now, 470,000 units is a very large number. And we do need to create new land by using part of our rural areas and also reclamation.
Okay,
and
Peter,
it is a matter of actually sort of working out the numbers.
Peter, thanks very much indeed for your call. We've got a little backlog of calls now in the last few minutes, so let's move on. Mrs. Lung, I think, is on the line. Mrs. Lung, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, please go ahead, Mrs. Lung.
Good morning.
Well, actually, I would like to talk about how I feel about Mr. Leung's governance in the past few years. I don't think he's really showing his love to the Hong Kong citizens. Like in the last match between the Hong Kong team and the Chinese team, he even couldn't make a comment about his support to the Hong Kong team.
How about that, Mr. Leung?
Well, we support Hong Kong sports and we support Hong Kong team. And as Hong Kong Chinese...
Why don't you say that then?
The financial secretary said that. He was overseas, didn't stop him. He posted pictures. Why didn't you do the same?
I did not want to respond to questions when people want to pitch Hong Kong against a country.
You don't think even to support the Hong Kong team when it's...
If it's we have a very interesting situation in Hong Kong because of one country, two systems. Hong Kong plays the country. Hong Kong doesn't play another city or province within the same country. And some of the questions that we wanted to avoid were politically loaded, and they were pitching Hong Kong against the country, and that shouldn't happen, particularly when you have young people on university campuses booing the national anthem when the anthem was played.
So what do you think of John Jun doing that?
Now, you look at Mr. Leung, if you look at what I did in the past 3 years...
Well, what about John Jun doing that?
Let me complete my response. If you look at what I did for Hong Kong, when it's a question of looking after Hong Kong's interests, I mean, these are real cases. It's not just talk or answering questions. On the question of milk powder, on the question